Whew, all right, well, that was a long day. September 2nd today, and I didn't quite make my destination, so I'm actually in a hotel en route. Having some trouble finding some items that I needed. But all's good now. So I was a little late, and tomorrow will be my last chance to get food, and then I'll be in the bush tomorrow. So it wound down, and I think I'll sit here and do a little reading for a minute. Get somebody heard before I call it a night. Listen to this. This is titled My First Encounter. Hello, Steve. This story isn't as spectacular as you may read, but this is my first encounter, and it highlights how sometimes we can block the truth from ourselves when we can't process the reality of something. This took place back in the early 90s. My buddy would work until 9-10 p.m. on a Friday and get home and pack his fly fishing gear and essentials and rack for 4 or 5 hours. He would then drive an hour to my place, and we'd load all the camping gear into his truck and take off before first light. This particular trip took 3 hours to get to the west branch of the Cinnamahoning River in Pennsylvania. We got there early, set up camp, grabbed a brew and sandwich, and finished until dark. We got back, made a quick dinner, and turned in because of the long day. Around 1:32 in the morning, I woke up and listened to my friend snoring. It was a full moonlit night and could see moonlight through the hemlock canopy as I tried to decide how badly I had to go. I decided to get up when I heard something very, very heavy approaching the tent. I thought, great, a frickin' bear. It came within 4 or 5 feet of the tent, and I could see a partial shadow silhouette against the tent. Its breath was a deep, guttural grunt, and it just stood there for almost a minute. I almost shit myself thinking it was going to attack the tent, so I quietly unzipped the sleeping bag while trying to will the boogeyman away, and as if by magic, it left. Heavy footfalls trailing off into the night. I decided I didn't have to go, after all, and was starting to drift off to sleep when I realized it walked away on 2 legs. I instantly knew what it was and lay awake processing everything. I finally fell back to sleep after convincing myself it wouldn't return. In the morning, I was careful not to mention anything to my buddy as I inspected the campsite for footprints. Nothing. Zip. Nada. The hard-packed earth and surrounding stones prevented any footprints. The weird thing is, I kind of blocked out this event for years before acknowledging it to my buddy after he saw a Bigfoot in Lycoming County. Why I buried that event in my memory beats the hell out of me. For fear, for ridicule, I don't know. But I can't help but wonder how many other folks have done the same. I appreciate what you're doing. Use my name if you want. I couldn't care less what anybody thinks. Lawrence Heiner, Chardon, Ohio. Lawrence, appreciate you, man. You're not the only one to pack away an experience and have it relived. Basically, because of coming here and listening to people, that triggers a lot of people to remember stuff. Your buddy's seen one. I wonder if your buddy's watching the channel, if he wants to share what he saw with the people, where and what happened. If he knows anything that he may want to share with the people. And you can hear that busy highway out there. Background sound, oh well, whatever, it is what it is. Yeah, everybody's worst nightmare, hearing something coming up to the tent, right? Something big. All right, here's another one. Mark this as red. This is titled Encounter in the Sierra Nevadas. I sent this encounter to the other email also. Hey there, Steve. First off, I want to say thank you for doing all you're doing on this topic. It's nice to have such a credible professional person finally publicly speak truths on this topic. Thanks for the kind words, man. Okay, my name is Jade Bowl, and I was born and raised in the Sierra Nevadas in a place called Shaver Lake, California, at about 6,000 feet elevation, just south of Yosemite. Living in high elevation mountains is a lifelong necessity to cut firewood to survive. In my mountain range, we have prized pine wood that only grows above 8,000 called tamarack. Now, we got tamarack here too. So, during the summer, a buddy and I would make our trips up the mountain to collect our firewood for the coming winter. Usually we would go to a remote area called Sample Meadow. When we were finished for the day, we would grab a couple of beers and hike to a close-by creek to cool off and explore around before heading home. This afternoon in 2004, we walked to the other side of this ridge and found a small creek. We sat down leaning on a couple of trees and drank a couple of beers while cooling off. We heard what sounded like a person walking close by. We both looked at each other, then looked towards the sound. About 50 yards away was a Sasquatch, about 6 feet tall, walking towards us like it hadn't noticed we were there. I instantly was scared, but didn't feel threatened at that point. We both were just frozen, looking at this thing. At about 35 yards away, it finally noticed us. It looked right at us, but it didn't seem surprised or startled at all. For some reason, a buddy and I both sat down, not taking our eyes off this thing. We then heard a whistle up above us. The creature looked up the hill, then back at us. Then a whistle from below us that sounded pretty close. It looked up the hill again, then back at us. We were both just sitting there frozen, pretty much in awe of what's happening. The one we're looking at made a clicking sound with its mouth and showed us its teeth, but it seemed in a playful, not threatening way, like a kid. What's crazy is it looked downhill and took a few steps downhill as we heard footsteps start to approach from uphill, which was behind us. Like it was taking our attention off their movements on purpose. About 20 yards to our right, a huge 8.5 to 9 foot tall monster was walking straight downhill right across the front of us towards the smaller one. As it walked by, it looked down at us and made a deep, gruntled growl sound like saying, "Don't effing move." It met up with the small one. The big boy whistled again. The one below whistled back, and they both headed downhill towards that one. Right as they walked away, the big boy looked back at us one more time and shook his head like, what's up, as to saying, "You guys are good to go now." Let me see that, read that one more time. One more time, and shook his head like, "What's up?" as to saying, "You guys are good to go now." It was the most amazing experience I've ever had, but absolutely terrifying. Over the years in this area, I always felt like we were being watched, but never seen anything until this day. My buddy and I finally stood up and promptly started back to the truck, and all we were saying was, "Oh my God, what the F, let's go, oh my God." On our ride home, we talked about the whole experience, and I was saying how that was the one time I didn't have a gun with me. What? I was saying how that was the one time I didn't have a gun with me when going on that walk in that area. Maybe that's a good thing. Might have been a whole different experience if I had. My buddy didn't want to tell anyone, so I respected his request until now, writing you. I told my father, but no one else. And that's why I won't mention his name, but you can mention mine. Appreciate you and what you're doing. Thanks, Jade Bull. This encounter was in the Sample Meadow area above Huntington Lake, California. Welcome to the club. Man, oh man, they gave you the big reveal, didn't they? What an incredible, crazy experience. And that's so funny. I had a lot of people have mentioned that, how one of these people basically looked at him like, "Don't you even think about moving, period," or et cetera, right? They can just tell that they're being basically told to stay put, don't move, and don't F around. Crazy. What a crazy thing. It's amazing they just allowed that to happen, isn't it? It's amazing. And yeah, that would be pretty terrifying. I wonder if your friend's here. You should forward this video to your friend and help him. Maybe it might, if he's aware of this channel, maybe it might help your friend. You never know. Now, who's this? What's this one? Experiences from across the pond, please read. Hey Steve, I'm an avid viewer of your channel and want to thank you for the platform you have created for experiencers of these beings to share their stories. It has taken me several days to put this email together, as it has brought back a lot of upsetting memories that I've tried to suppress over the years. I'm a down-to-earth and honest person and have no need to lie or make up stories. That being said, I have an experience that I would like to share with you. I've held on to this for around 33 years. And with the exception of my granddad, I've never told anyone a soul. Sorry, I've never told another soul. I grew up in a small village in the countryside of northwest of England. My mother and father split when I was around 3 years old. I stayed with my mom, but she was largely absent for most of my youth, and I was basically raised by my granddad, whom I lived with until he passed away. Growing up, I had 2 best friends. The world was a safe place back then, and on weekends and during holidays, my 2 friends and I would play outside in the woods from early morning until after sunset. It was during the school summer holidays of '87 that this incident took place, and I was 8 years old at the time. And what I'm about to tell you is unbelievable and makes no sense to me even now, but I think the time has come to share it. On the morning that this happened, I went around to call for my 2 friends to see if they wanted to come out and play. There was an area of woodland at the top of the village where a huge old oak tree had been struck by lightning and partially fallen down. My friends and I had claimed this area as our own little playground, as the half of the tree that had fallen was really good for climbing and making tree houses and dens. And we had christened it the Base, due to it being the place we started the majority of our childhood adventures from. It turned out that one of my friends wasn't feeling well, so wasn't allowed to play, and the other had gone shopping with his mom, so that day I headed out to the base alone. To get to the fallen tree, I had to walk through a large field which was periodically maintained, but at the time the grass hadn't been cut and was around 3 feet high. The fallen tree was part of a larger copse of trees along the bottom edge of this field, and the lighter wood where the tree had split apart was visible through the overhanging branches of the surrounding trees from about halfway across the field. As I got to the middle of the field, I looked towards the base to see if I could see any other kids there, and I realized that I couldn't see the lighter wood of the fallen tree, but in its place, all I could see was brown. My 8-year-old mind couldn't process this, and the best I would come up with was that the tree had somehow grown its bark back since I was last there just a few days before. I was intrigued and took a few steps forward when an overwhelming sense of fear came over me and stopped me in my tracks. At this point, I couldn't see anything, but somehow I knew that something was very wrong, and that something was near to the base. As I stared towards the base, I realized that there was something brown obscuring my view of the fallen tree, and that it had started to move. The thing that was standing there had its back to me, and the second I realized this, it slowly turned to face me, and it was at that point that I knew I was in trouble. I realized that the brown I could see was hair, not fur, but hair, about 4 inches long, and it was exactly the same color as the tree bark. I couldn't tell if the hair was different colors or uniformly brown, with dead leaves and branches and such in it, but from a distance, it would have been invisible to anyone looking. I couldn't move. My limbs felt like lead, and I could feel my heart beating in my ears. Every fiber of my being was telling me to run, but I was so scared, I was rooted to that spot. The thing squatted down similar to how a sumo wrestler does before a fight. I couldn't see its head or face, as it was obscured by the overhanging branches, but I got a clear view of its chest, stomach, and arms. The hair on its chest and stomach was slightly shorter than the hair on its back and arms, and a bit lighter in color, and it was huge. easily 4 feet across the shoulders and at least 8 feet tall in its squatting position. Jesus, that's big. Keep in mind that an 8-year-old, at 8 years old, I'd never seen or heard anything like this before in my life. To me, this thing was a monster, plain and simple. Its shoulders and biceps were absolutely massive. And my only point of reference was that this thing was like the Incredible Hulk, but with hair. I was about 30 feet or so from it, and I was so scared that I didn't even realize I had started to cry. If this wasn't unbelievable enough, it brought its hands together in front of its chest, making a circle shape with its thumbs and fingers. In the middle of this circle appeared a ball of pure white light, which I now know to be an orb, but at that time I likened it to a floating crystal ball. The being stood up and dropped its arms down as it did so. Sorry, one more time. Oh, yeah, okay. So the being stood up and dropped its arms down as it did so. Its hands were close to being level with its knees, and the orb stayed in the same position where it had appeared, and rose with the creature when it stood. There was no sound as this happened. No birds singing, no grasshoppers chirping, and even though I could feel the breeze and see the grass and the leaves on the branches moving, there was just deafening silence. I don't know how long this all took, but I realized I had been holding my breath as all this happened. I exhaled hard, and as I did so, a crystal clear thought flashed through my mind. Quote, "If you don't run now, you'll never see home again." End quote. I don't know how to explain where this thought came from, but I know for a fact it wasn't mine. At this moment, I felt a familiar nuzzing in my armpit and realized that Hobo, my granddad's Irish wolfhound, was behind me. I don't know how he got out and didn't realize he had followed me. He put his head beside my left shoulder and began growling and snarling. And this somehow snapped me out of the trance I was in. I turned and sprinted as fast as I could back through the field and didn't look back. I don't know when I pissed myself, but I realized that I had when I was halfway home. I was crying so hard that I could barely breathe. Hobo ran beside me all the way home. When I got back home, it took my granddad about an hour or so to calm me down and explain to him what had happened. He responded by giving me the worst beating he had ever given me in my life and sending me to my room. He then left the house telling me not to move and didn't return for about a half an hour. When he did return, he came into my room and he sat on my bed. He hugged me and comforted me while I began to cry again. I was scared and confused. He told me that I had seen the wood woes, pronounced wood woes, that I had to stay indoors for the rest of the summer, that I was forbidden from ever playing at that base again. Needless to say, I never went back there. Before this happened, I was a happy, outgoing kid, but this experience made me withdrawn and timid. I asked my granddad what the wood woes was, and he told me that he was the tall, hairy man who guards the woods. He said that he scares grown-ups away and sometimes takes kids to a place in the woods where they're never ever seen again. At the time, I had no reason to doubt my granddad. He had raised me and was the only father figure I had when growing up. I think he beat me because he was scared and angry at what had happened to me and took these feelings out on me. I don't blame him for it, and I will never think any less of him for it. I didn't even hear the term Bigfoot until years later at a high school when I found a book on unexplained mysteries and cryptids. I have since learned the stories of the wood woes go back to the 15th century. It is referred to as the hairy man, the wild man of the woods, the faun, and sometimes the green man. I don't know if it is a Bigfoot / Sasquatch type being, or if it's related to these entities, but I know for a fact that there are things on this planet and in the woods and dark places that are beyond most people's understanding. I believe that my granddad also had some kind of encounter with one of those beings, although he never admitted it to the day he died. Anyway, that's my experience. It's okay if you choose not to share this, and if you don't believe me, that's okay as well. I mean, who would believe a story like that? After my granddad passed away, I had to grow up fast. And once I took control of my life, I stopped being scared and I stopped looking for answers. I've researched all the folklore I can find, and over the years I've been in every forest, up every mountain, and on every moor in England, Scotland, and Wales. I've never seen or experienced anything like that since that morning all those years ago. I decided to share this with you because I admire what you are doing. The more people that know about these things, the better. Today I am 41 years old and still researching and looking for answers. I still believe that if it wasn't for my granddad's dog, that thing would have taken me. I am a father of 2 children and talk openly with them about this topic, although I have never told either of them about the experience I had when I was a kid. I still live in the Cheshire countryside in the northwest of England, and the woods around where I live now are the playground of my kids and their friends. I don't want them to be scared of the woods, but I do encourage them to be sensible. They never go anywhere alone and always take one of my working lurchers with them when they venture into the woods. Thank you for the platform. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep safe out there. Best wishes to you, your loved ones, and all those people searching for answers. Sincerely, Paul. Well, Paul, I'm glad you decided to share that, man. I'm sure positive, since you've been doing all the digging, you know how many sightings have been around what you refer to as across the pond. There's many. We have had many people from England email us. Many, many, many. I believe that's the first time I've heard of one having its hands holding his hands in a way and a bright light forming in between the hands. I haven't heard that yet, although I have heard of different colored lights being midway up the chest of one, as it was moving down the side of a highway. The light orbs and the Sasquatch thing basically go hand in hand so many times. It's ridiculous. It's a very strong pattern to note, right? As you're gathering your own information, putting your own puzzle together. Crazy. What a crazy, wild thing to see. But getting beat, as soon as you share what happened, you got beat. That's kind of hard to swallow. I don't agree with that myself, but whatever. Sounds like you grew up and turned out okay, right? But anyway, I thought I'd do a short one here, but the background noise is kind of bugging the shit out of me. I like the peacefulness of the outdoors, so tomorrow we'll get back at it normally. Start streaming with all my new technology knowledge, and then I'll share some more stories with everybody soon. Hopefully stream live. I'm gonna probably be streaming live at least twice a day, I think, maybe even 3 times. And because I'm gonna do live stream in camp, telling stories. I think that'd be great, and that'll be streamed on the other channel, the How to Hunt channel, as well. The hunting stuff will be, but this topic will remain here on this channel for sure. And there you go. I got some outrageous stories I'm going to share with you guys tomorrow. Absolute mind-boggling, mind-bending, I can't believe this is happening stories I'm going to share tomorrow. I have to share this with you guys. It's just absolutely right crazy out to lunch. But anyway, that's it. That's the end of my long day. Here's a short video anyways. Hope everybody's out there safe, having a fun long weekend if you're having a long weekend this weekend. And make sure you're doing something you love to do. Even if it's for an hour, whatever. Just make sure that you make what you love to do part of your routine. You have to, all right? You have to. And there you go. Quick, short video. And I'll be back shortly. Share my story at howtohunt.com and you will be heard, word for word.